Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to this Techstrong learning experience brought to you by Zscaler. My name is Cody, and I'm the host of Techstrong Learning, and we have an exciting presentation ahead. Before we get that ball rolling, we do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to review. First off, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude this live session today. If you want to engage with us, there are a couple options to do so. The first of which is the chat tab. You'll find that chat tab on the right side of your screen, and I'd like you to let us know that that chat tab works. Go ahead and start testing it out by letting us know from where you are joining us today. If you have any questions, we do want you to direct those to the Q&A panel. Directing them to that Q&A tab directly to the right side of the chat tab just helps us keep them organized so that we can address those when we see fit. If you jump over to where it says handouts, you'll notice there are a couple of resources there, so feel free to grab those. And I will also let you know that we have about 6 polls throughout our program today, so be on your toes. We want your feedback. We want to hear from you today. Of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards, so be sure to stick around for the duration of our program today. So our topic is top phishing trends and how to stop phishing attacks. And I'm joined today by Emily Loffer, Threat Research Product Marketing Manager at Zscaler. Emily, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Cody. Awesome. Well, I actually went ahead and launched the first poll on you guys. So hopefully you see that popping up. Looks like we're getting just a couple responses. We'll give a second for people to join and keep throwing your responses in there. The first poll question is, have you or your organization been a victim of a phishing attack in the last 12 months? It's hard for me to imagine that you haven't been an attempted phishing attack hasn't happened to your organization, but perhaps you haven't had a major incident involving a phishing attack, which is fantastic. If that's the case, let us know. This may be a little ambiguous of whether or not you've been the victim. So we'll keep it as that definition of did it cause a big incident? Was there a lot of follow-up from that phishing attack? Because I assume that every organization is getting an onslaught of phishing attempts every day. So we have some of the answers rolling in. Let's see if I can share this. Oh, cool. Okay. I think it's auto shared, right, Cody? Are you able to see? Hopefully.
Yeah, so I actually shared that for you. I'll handle that for you.
All right. I wasn't sure if it was auto shared or not. Sweet. So it looks like 29% said yes, they had an incident. No surprise there. And 71% is doing great. So hopefully you guys still get a lot of takeaways from this webinar and continue to defend yourselves in the future in an effective way. How do we go back to the slides? Cool. You went back for me. Thank you. All right, so let's talk about Threat Labs. I represent Threat Labs. This is Zscaler's internal threat research group. We have over 150 global world-class experts that are every day focusing on discovering and blocking new threats for the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange. So this happens automatically for our customers, but they also, in the process of doing this, they get so much great research, and that's why we publish these reports and the blogs that we do. If you check out our security research blog, which there is a link to in the handout section, you can also go kind of back out of, if that's specific to the phishing report, and see all the latest and greatest. We have a lot of followers for that blog. We have media and other researchers and industry experts that follow the blog because they want to know, what are these guys finding? 150 global, researchers is a ton in this industry, by far one of the biggest groups that we know of doing this research on a daily basis. So they're getting all the data that they're looking at from the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange. That's our Zscaler cloud. We have over 150 different exchange locations where they're grabbing that. And we're processing 280 billion requests per day. That is more requests per day than Google last time I checked. We are blocking 8 billion threats a day. So the research that they're doing, the automated tools, and the other tools that we're bringing in, and feeds and threat feeds and things like that, are automatically blocking those 8 billion threats per day across all of the Zscaler customers. We have over 250,000 unique security updates a day also going in there. So definitely, if you are a Zscaler customer, you're already taking full advantage of this. And if you're not, you get to take advantage of the research and find out more with me today. Great. So this year we saw, and we've been tracking this year over year, I think for about 4 years now, the phishing report. And so this year we saw a 47% jump, an increase in phishing attempts globally across the entire exchange. And this should not come as a surprise. I'm going to keep going because here is the data from 2020, 2021, 2022. As you can see, just sort of a steady stair-step climb here in the number of observed phishing attacks. Now, these were observed attack attempts, so they were blocked, of course, and discovered by, the researchers and the exchange and everything like that. So they weren't successful, but this should just go to show that the increase in the onslaught of attempts is rising. And if you're experiencing this as well, no surprise, because it's a still super lucrative business for attackers, right? I like to kind of compare this when I talk about phishing and why it's not going away anytime soon. I like to compare it to sort of the petty theft in the physical criminal world when we abstract it from cyber. And we look at these people that are kind of stealing packages, like criminals stealing packages off of your doorstep. They're maybe nicking something from the Home Depot, something like that. And they're getting away with those type of thefts versus the people that are like holding up banks or convenience stores, right? That's a big leap in the criminal enterprise there. And it's much easier. People feel much more secure, the criminals do, of just grabbing a package. That's how phishing is compared to some of the other sort of cyber criminal enterprises they could be getting into, like becoming a ransomware affiliate, let's say. There's a lot more risk associated with that. So that's why you're going to see phishing continue to increase. Also, it's just so easy to go out and scam individuals of corporations as a way of getting in. So also this whole network is tied, of course, to these other criminal networks and enterprises in cybersecurity, where phishing being the most typical initial vector of compromise is going to lead downstream to other types of attacks taking place. The ransomware threat actors are going to depend on those successful phishing threats. There's recon being, done in the phishing phase as well, which is handed over to other threat actors. There is an enterprise here, of course, and there's an exchange taking place. And we know that, and we'll talk a little bit more about like phishing as a service, and that's part of that exchange. And then also all of this stuff is happening across the dark web, and there's a lot of communication taking place as well. So no surprise, phishing attacks are going to continue to increase and stay number one for a while. So what other trends did we see this year? So the threat researchers, of course, they saw that 47% year-over-year growth in phishing attacks. We also saw a 576% increase in phishing attacks against education. So this is most likely, of course, we have to make some sort of assessments based on the current climate and the data that we have, but this is most likely due to a lot of the post-pandemic sort of questions and communication and lack of communication around student loan repayments and things like that. And then also people getting back to school and online school programs. So saying that these attacks are against education, one, there's so much opportunity for scammers to say, hey, here's your student loan forgiveness, apply for student loan repayment, income-based repayment, things like that, especially as people saw a lack of communication coming from the actual government agencies and different, especially in the United States, and where the predominant most phishing attacks happen. And then also from student loan agencies and things like that, not communicating enough. So then that gave attackers a really good opportunity to jump in and be the ones communicating about things. And there was a lot of misinformation being put out there by attackers as well around education. And then, of course, this online learning and everything's through a portal. And every parent has to log in through a portal to see what their kid is doing. And college kids have to log in through portals and all types of things. Teachers, everyone's logging in through a portal when it comes to education now. And those portals offer another opportunity to attack with phishing attacks. So the 576% increase can be explained by that. Another thing is we saw a shift this year away from last year, where we saw a heavy look at retail and commercial kind of enterprises like manufacturing. So retail, wholesale, commercial enterprise, and manufacturing. And so there was a 436% increase last year in those attacks. And then this year that shifted down, and then we saw this education rising. And this was an important thing to note because the phishers tend to shift their tactics year over year, and they'll shift towards different targets. And this is because, one, they've hit a lot of people in those industries. Two, those industries get smarter as they get more attacks, right? So they start shoring up their defenses. And three, they need to keep it fresh and keep evolving to new ones that are unexpected. So once they say, okay, this one's petered out, let's go over to education now. So they're going to shift with what's happening in the media, the trends that are going on in the world. They're also just going to shift so that things don't get old, so that their attacks remain successful and relevant. We also saw a 273% increase in phishing attacks against finance and insurance. And this also should be no surprise as the world got back to using things like insurance and sort of the financial stuff, the questions going on in the last year. This also presented a lot of opportunity for them. And I'm going to scoot back over here. I sort of skipped over this. There was a 60% increase in phishing attacks against U.S. victims. So I noted that the U.S. is the most attacked country in the world. We'll get to that. But we also did see a 60% increase in that. So again, sort of a little higher than the year over year growth, but not too surprising. And then all the way over on the right side of my slide here, we saw 50% increase, or we saw nearly 50% of phishing attacks imitating the Microsoft brand and using Microsoft, sub-brands to launch those attacks as well, such as Microsoft OneDrive, where we saw 17.4% of overall attacks. That's not 17.4% of the 50%, it's 17.4% of the actual total of observed phishing attacks imitated or used Microsoft OneDrive. So that's pretty significant. Attackers are definitely leveraging these popular softwares. Sometimes we say everyone has Microsoft. They have something Microsoft product based, right? So that's like a really easy bet for them. Hey, let's cater these attacks to using that. And going with the workflows and the day-to-day things that are really familiar to our victims, especially our enterprise victims, where we're going to get the most bang for our buck. All right. Advancing. I have another poll question. So hopefully that launched. Did it launch here, Cody?
It sure did.
Okay, great. I'm still trying to figure out, make sure I've got everything technically on board. So have you received a phishing email that you thought was legitimate in the past year? Well, if you don't check your email, this is probably not a problem, but if you do, you may have gotten one. All right, we can probably go ahead and just share those results now. I'm not sure if everyone's answered, but I want to throw those results up there, Cody, if you can. 88%, still changing, 78%. Okay, so it looks like a fair amount of you. This is like sort of flip-flop from our first poll. And, oh, well, now it's shifting more. Okay, maybe I didn't let it open long enough. We'll let you guys keep responding for a second here. See if there's any more shifts. Cool. So it's almost even. I'm going to guess that's because a lot of you are really savvy. And when you see those phishing emails, you're like, oh, heck no, I'm not expecting this. And you're slashing that and saying, this is definitely a phishing email. But one thing I want to mention is that these attacks are going to be getting harder and harder to detect. And although email is still the sort of primary vector that phishing attackers love to use because it's so easy, especially because business reliance on email, we are seeing a lot of new different tactics and techniques come about where they're using different avenues like OneDrive. Okay, we can close that poll and keep going. Here we go. So let's look at phishing attempts by industry. So perhaps if you answered yes, maybe you were in the education industry or finance, because those are at the top this year. So I actually put the actual observed number of attempted attacks and also, did this bar chart so you could see the difference and sort of that step up between the different industries. So yeah, education and finance on the top, government, healthcare dropped a lot this year. Healthcare was super high last year. Let me see if I can pull up what it was last year. I didn't actually put it on here, but I will try and find that in just a moment. But yeah, it actually dropped, I think, like 30 something percent. So that was a huge drop. Let's see. Nope, I'll try and find it a little bit later during the next poll. Um, but we saw that shift because of post-pandemic. The focus shifted from away from healthcare, although it did shift towards some healthcare insurance related scams as people resumed sort of their regular healthcare routine maintenance and stuff like that that they were putting on pause during the pandemic, during lockdown and stuff. So we did see some of that insurance kind of scam stuff related. But of course, the finance and insurance industry rose significantly, and healthcare did drop. Same with manufacturing, retail, and wholesale, and services, as those were sort of the target from the year before. I'm going to keep going, and we'll be making some more observations. Here's another chart of this, just in case you prefer the pie chart view, to see how significantly, that education was 25% of the overall pie of phishing attempts by industry. So that gives you a little different idea of the breakdown there. And other would just be everything else that you don't see listed here. But we try and make it easy for you by giving it in digestible chunks. All right, next, the most targeted countries. So I actually did pull up last year's. I have it off screen here. I'm going to be looking back and forth to tell you some of the differences. United States still in spot number 1. That is no surprise. Actually, the United Kingdom jumped up to number 2 from slot number 5. So that was sort of interesting. And the Netherlands jumped up from 4 to 3. So that's kind of predictable. Russia was number 6 and now is number 4. This could also be due to some of the activity taking place with the Russia-Ukraine conflict and opportunities there as well. Canada actually wasn't on the list of the top 10 last year, so they made it up to number 5. So I'm not sure exactly what was happening in Canada, but definitely worth digging into more. And if you're in Canada, something to be aware of. Singapore, we saw Singapore jump up on the list last year into the top 10, and it was actually number 2 last year, and now it's dropped down to number 6, but it went from off the chart to on the chart between 2020 and 2021. So no surprise it's on the chart again. This has a lot to do with the retail spending in Singapore and the wealth of the nation. And so as we saw the phishers shifting away from targeting the retail industry and, manufacturing, it makes sense that Singapore would drop a little bit too, because that is the primary vector that they were exploiting in Singapore. Germany was number 3 last year. It's number 7 this year, so it fell a little bit, probably more due to the fact that the other nations above it have increased so much. France was 7 and now it's 8. We expect to see a little shift left or right. Japan is on the list this year, and it was not last year. I think it was a number 11. It's not on my other screen here, but if I remember looking, it was just off the list, so it creeped up a little bit. And China, number 10. Last year, China was number 8. So interesting shift in the most targeted countries. I don't think anything on here is particularly surprising. If you do, let us know in the comments. Or if you have any observations or any insider knowledge of why this may have happened, to a particular country, and you say, hey, like I noticed probably Japan jumped up because of X, Y, Z. I'm sure our audience would love to know. So please let me know about that. All right, next. Here is just a different view of those countries. And also I put the exact counts over here on the left-hand side, so you can see exactly what we observed in each different country. And this goes beyond. So China was number 10. So this, I believe, is the top 20. And you're going to find all of this in the phishing report if you want to go ahead and check that out. And that should be linked in your hands out section. Let's go ahead and launch poll number 3. How confident are you in your ability to recognize and avoid phishing attacks? Let's see, I'm going to answer this too. All right, we have some results coming in. Do you want to share the results live as they come in? Perfect. Thank you, Cody. So everyone's somewhat confident, or is that just me because you guys have more of a delay than I do? Okay, cool. All right, now we have some different ones. I said somewhat confident. I think I can spot some, but then when it comes to these new ones that are coming out, browser and the browser scams, um, leveraging, single sign-on from providers like Google, and it looks exactly, they scrape the page, looks exactly like the Google login. I might be fooled. The best thing I can do is say I try to stick to the sites I know and not go off the beaten path. But if they hit the sites I know and use all the time and they imitate them, that's when they're going to get me for sure. Okay, awesome. 50% of you are very confident. I love that. We can close this poll and move on. Great. So let's talk about the most targeted and imitated brands. I already mentioned this, but Microsoft was the most targeted and imitated. Now, this particular chart looks at sort of a Microsoft general, and then it breaks out specifically OneDrive and SharePoint, and let's see what else, Office 365 across there. But I have another one that I'll toggle back to where I consolidated those. So then you see that Microsoft is actually representing 50 Microsoft brands are representing 53.6% of the overall attacks brands imitated, and also targeted in terms of they're being targeted and used to deliver these attacks to the victims. So that's a pretty significant number, and it probably reflects pretty closely the use of Microsoft tools compared to other things. Also of note on this list, so I'll go back one more time so you can see. Of note on this list, we see Binance, so we see cryptocurrency. This is no surprise. There is a certain nation state I heard about the other day that has been getting billions of dollars a year. They've actually focused on stealing cryptocurrency wallets, and they're getting billions of dollars a year to help fund their military. I'll let you do your own research and figure out which nation state that is, but very interesting to see how the cryptocurrency is being used. It's just so easy, instead of mining or instead of doing some other sort of export or manufacturing or trade, you can just grab crypto wallets and get millions of dollars if you have, effective enough phishing scams, and you're done. Your payday's in the bag. So that's why we see that being such a big target there. Then we see illegal streaming. COVID-19 is really trickling off. Government, of course. Government's nice because you get lots of people's PII, their personal credentials. You can get passport numbers, ID numbers, all kinds of things when you do government scams. Netflix, just very popular. Facebook, Google, Telegram. So Telegram is popular also among attackers, and I'll get to that in a second. Adobe and the vulnerabilities that go with it. And Adobe has like this nice sharing site going along with it, which makes it really easy for attackers to post things, which then look legitimate because they're like hosted on Adobe, and then really they're phishing scams. So I want to go back to like the illegal streaming and the Telegram. And one thing that we find with phishing scams and with other types of scams is the attackers try to catch people off guard when they're doing things they shouldn't be doing. So you're downloading an illegal cracked software. That's a really good chance that you're going to get hit by malware or by a phishing scam or something like that. They do it for multiple reasons. One, I think it's sort of like somebody's already doing something wrong, so we're going to make him pay for that. And they feel like a little less maybe guilt. I'm not even sure if they feel guilt, but whatever. It mitigates it a little bit. Then number two is it's unpredictable because we don't go, I may know what it means to hit adobe.com and what to expect if I do that all the time, or other sites where I purchase things. But if I'm going to a legal streaming site to get something, a software that I should be purchasing, I don't necessarily know what it's going to look like or feel like. And when I hit that thing, I'm not even aware if there's redirects taking place and things like that, and how many times I'm going to have to say yes or no, because I'm not like entering my credit card information in a typical retail site where I would be on the up and up. So I know the exact like procedure and layout. This is like got a lot of advertisements, got a lot of redirects, things like that. So that's a really easy way to hit these victims because it's unpredictable. And it's like going in a dark alley to buy, I don't know, let's say some gourmet garlic or something, and you're like going down this dark alley and you don't know. It's not like going to the grocery store to buy regular garlic, right? Like when you're in the dark alley, anything can happen. You don't know if you have to tap this guy on the shoulder and then pay that guy, and then you have to go and like lift up this trash can and there's the special garlic. That's the same thing with hitting those illegal streaming sites. And Telegram is a favored thing among hackers. These Telegram channels, especially where they're exfiltrating a lot of data and they're doing things. So there's attacks going on there. There's also attacks on other attackers, which is really interesting. No honor among thieves is what we call it. There's a cool blog about it. Check it out on that security research site if you want to learn more. But these guys hit each other all the time. We don't know if there's like rivalry going on. There probably definitely is. Or it's just easy. Somebody else does the work for you, and then you put in a backdoor and grab all that reward. And whenever something looks really good, you take advantage of it and burn your alliance with this other cyber criminal. All right, poll question number 4. We can go ahead and launch this. Does your org provide regular training on how to recognize and avoid phishing attacks? Okay, give you guys a second to answer that while I recaffeinate. Let's see if the results are coming in. I know there's a delay. Okay, yes. Yes, frequently. Yes, occasionally. That's what I would hope for and expect. Some no's. It looks like not many of you responded yet, so we'll leave it open for another minute. Of course, I'm sure I don't have to tell you guys that, this training is essential. There are so many independent vendors out there that can give you more information because they collect it. This is what they do. These are the offerings that they service, is providing this kind of automated training. But there's ways that you can do it in-house as well, right? You can have your own detection and modules and things that you put out automatically. One thing I've heard over and over again is the more immediate the training is for someone that fails either a real phishing scam or a phishing exercise, if that training is delivered immediately, it is far more effective in the long run. So if you haven't invested or kind of shaped your security program around the delivering that immediately, you should definitely be doing that, because once they have to, let's say, complete a module or talk to somebody from security immediately and say, hey, you did this, this, and this. Let's talk about what you should have done and why this was wrong. It sticks with them a lot more. Humans are kind of like animals. We need to be trained immediately. If you put too much space between the time of the infraction and the sort of reward or correction, then we just space it out. So make sure you're doing that. Cool. So we have about 50% yes frequently, and then it was 43% yes occasionally, and 7%, which was just one person answering at no. So great. Moving on. Let's talk about top referring domains. So these are domains, like I said. So Adobe's on here again. These are where phishing stuff refers from. So these are places that the phishers can put up their scams or their sites or their forms or whatever it is that they're putting there, and it looks legitimate. So when I hit it, I'm like, I'm on adobe.com. This is trusted, right? I'm on walmart.com. That was the top last year. We don't have that here, but you'll be able to see. You can grab last year's report too if you are interested in the side-by-side. But so then I'm like, okay, well, Walmart and Adobe have tons of legitimate affiliates that post real content on there and share real content. And in the process, that allows for phishers and things to go in and post their own content, just like they are a legitimate creator, because Adobe can't qualify, and neither can Walmart. And actually, in fact, Walmart does qualify who their suppliers are, but what they can't qualify or they can't protect against is when those individual suppliers get their credentials compromised. They can't always account for that. So that's how someone can get their, their Walmart posting for their product, their supplier product compromised. And then all of a sudden, instead of the PDF that they're posting that's supposed to be instructions on how to use this tool set, it's a malicious PDF that now you're downloading, getting a phishing attack. So those are the kind of things that are happening there. And especially, I think, Adobe, because there's all sorts of filters and things that you can grab, and you have to install them. So anytime you're installing something, you may be installing malware or phishing, or you're entering something into a form, boom, you can be hit. Next, growing tactics are driving successful phishing attacks. So this is, what are the tactics, right? Number one, we talk about phishing as a service. So these services are really helping fishers, especially novice fishers, wage these powerful phishing attacks. They're doing all kinds of things. And of course, they're linking in also, as I said, to malware threat actors, to ransomware threat actors down the chain as well. So they can give you phishing kits. Although now with the rise of AI, maybe some of these things like the email templates and stuff are going to become irrelevant, because AI is making it super easy for anyone to create phishing pages, to create grammatically perfect emails that they can send out. So the days of old where you could just look for spelling errors and weird grammatical things are gone, probably. So phishing as a service continues to grow and expand their offerings. Available on the dark web and cheap. And they offer 24/7 service with a lot of, support for a lot of these services. So that can't be beat. Then we have smishing attacks. So we're seeing a lot of bypassing multi-factor authentication. And if you're interested in that, we have another webinar coming up on this topic where we're going to dive deeper into the MFA attacks and what's going on there. But basically, smishing attacks are getting really interesting. One of the things we have too is where they will imitate using AI or recording your boss's voice, figure out who you are. You get a phone call, it appears to be from your boss, they spoof the number, and they're one of those services. And then they're like, hey, I can't hear you. Like, go to text or something, or go to IM chat. And then you go over there and they're telling you, I need you to do this thing for me. And somehow it involves the exchange of money or documents or something that they want. And so that is an example. And then, of course, just like MFA bombing, where they keep sending the request until finally the victim, sort of disoriented, maybe doesn't know what to do, and like thinks they clicked no, but they clicked yes. They get through. I get like text messages every day now. I don't know about you guys. I think most of them are blocked, luckily, where it's like trying to get me to do something, or just like the hey, with no, like, this is who I am, this is what I want, I'm from your past, nothing. Just like, hey, like, do you want to respond to me? And then they like pretend to know you. And maybe they've done some research and they can be really convincing, and they'll be like, it's Bill or it's Amy. And you're like, oh, whoa, did you get a new number? They're like, yeah. And then you just keep going. I know you guys have all seen this, but this can be really convincing for some people. And definitely they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't successful. Next, browser and the browser attacks. I talked about these, invisible to the naked eye. Even the researchers, they have got to do a little bit of work to detect these things. They look exactly like the real thing. And when you look up, you're like, okay, I'm on this site. This is exactly what this site looks like. And you're entering credentials. And then you realize it's a browser in the browser. There was a redirect, and that sucks. And then just other like man in the middle or adversary in the middle attacks, where they're really disguising themselves well as you're something that you expect, something that's routine and looks just like the real thing. We're seeing a lot of that. So that is what is driving a lot of the successful phishing attacks today. All right, let's do another poll. Does your org use any technology solutions to detect and prevent phishing attacks? I hope so. So number one, yes, we use dedicated anti-phish tools. So this can be anything that is a dedicated anti-phishing tool. Two is, yes, we use a combo of email filters, antivirus, and other security measures. So if you kind of are using those but not dedicated anti-phishing tools, answer that. But if you're doing both, answer C. We use A and B. And then if you're not using anything, any specific technology for phishing, you just like have a guy sitting there, maybe answer D. Cool. So it looks like with our preliminary results, about almost 50% are using combo of email filters, antivirus, and other security measures. And then 36% are using A and B. Fantastic. So I would love to get into more of like what you're using, but we don't have time today. So we're going to keep going, and we'll fly forward and talk about what other things you can do to defend yourself against phishing attacks. Cody, when you're able to. Thank you. Okay. Prevention guidance, get into it. All right, this should be no surprise to you. Number one, you need to understand the risks to better inform policy and strategy across your organization. Two, leverage those automated tools and threat intel to reduce phishing incidents. And like I said before, like those tools could be anything from, you know, they look for pattern matching, AI learning, all that within an actual email setting, and they're detecting those and pulling those out for you and giving you, warnings and saying like, hey, this looks like it's a 90%, 99% chance phishing email, stuff like that. We auto quarantined it. Like, let us know if you want to undo that. Or it could be those services where they're providing you end user training, security awareness training for phishing, things like that. So look at those different tools. There's a big range in between. Of course, Zscaler has a lot of stuff that we'll talk about in just a minute that is baked in, but definitely I would recommend in the overall phishing strategy that you have a layered approach. I recommend that across any type of security strategy, a layered approach for every type of threat, because that layered approach is going to ensure the most security coverage. It's also going to ensure that as tactics and techniques change and shift over time, that your approach shifts with it because it's so layered. And three, implement zero trust architecture to limit the blast radius of a successful attack. We're going to get way more into that. Four, deliver timely training to build security awareness and promote user reporting. Five, simulate phishing attacks to identify gaps in your program. This is important. It's good to keep your users on their toes and simulate these attacks. I always feel so accomplished when I get one of these from security and I don't fall for it. And I'm like, I won. And then you see the report that comes out afterwards, like this many people fell for the phishing attack. And then if you are, combining that with the training afterwards, it can be super, super effective. Also, your security team needs to know what kind of things can happen as well. There's companies that will do phishing attack simulation for you. Check them out. I think they're probably really great. And we partner with a few, and definitely getting one of those in-house or getting one of those vendors to join your team will help you immensely with that. Next, so let's talk about how Zscaler specifically helps mitigate phishing attacks. So the Zscaler Zero Trust architecture, which is baked into basically the Zero Trust framework and principles are baked in throughout the architecture that we provide, eliminates phishing attacks or helps prevent them in 4 different ways. Number one, we prevent compromise. So over 90% of traffic now, according to Google, is encrypted, which means you need to be doing full SSL inspection and across everything at scale, not just a portion of things, of high risk things, but everything. Because without that, there's going to be so much bypassing you and lurking within that encrypted traffic. That's where all the attacks are now, and that's when they're going to continue to be. We thought we were smart. We're going to do encrypted traffic. We're going to keep the attackers out. They shifted tactics like they always do. They're always trying to make their tactics and techniques and the things that they do, these scams, these attacks look more and more legitimate. That's their ultimate goal because that makes them more successful. So anytime we come up with something really great, like recovering from data backups and backing up our stuff, then we get things like double extortion attacks with ransomware attackers, right? They adjust when we adjust our defenses. So basically, it's time. You need to be doing full SSL inspection at scale. And you need a solution like Zscaler so it doesn't bog you down because your firewalls are not equipped to do this. Neither are your other on-prem or other tools. You need something that is fully in the cloud that is capable of scaling and doing this at speed in real time. Browser isolation. I've been experiencing a bit of browser isolation recently. This is when the browser is frozen, so now the user can see it, observe it. They're not actually there. They're getting basically a video feed of the thing they're trying to look at, and they're not able to input based on the policies that you set up. They may not be able to input any information, therefore they couldn't fill any forms that are potentially malicious, and they're not able to download anything malicious from that particular browser that they're viewing through the video screen. So it comes up like zscaler.isolation, and then it's the browser. So that's when and there's a little pop-up that tells the user like, hey, you're in browser isolation mode. So that is really helpful. Although sometimes I'm like, oh, I want to be able to enter this. And then I realize, oh, the reason that this is like this is because this is obviously a brand new site. Like somebody just spun this up and created it. And sometimes that's like for marketing purposes, which case it's super easy to change that from a policy perspective. We had once an incident of that. We changed it across the board. Now it's no longer an issue for a marketing tool, which it looks nefarious. I mean, if that URL is less than 10 days old and it's asking you to put in your user credentials, that's a little suspicious. Maybe throw in the browser isolation. Next, of course, policy-driven access to prevent access to suspicious websites. So you can definitely be blocking any suspicious websites, probably those illegal downloading sites, things like that. We also have an automated sandbox, which is going to look for things that people may be downloading if they do happen to click on a phishing email. So we'll get into that. But from the initial compromise perspective, that's where you're not going to get compromised with additional attacks like malware and things that may come from as a result of somebody opening and falling for a phishing email. And a lot of those malwares too, now the mobile ones and the ones on your computer, they've gotten really good at just kind of grabbing information that they want. They watch, observe, and then they send that home to the attackers. So then the attackers get to decide what they want instead of just giving you that straightforward, like send us your credit card information or fill in this form with your personal information. Now they can sit and watch the workload happening or the daily, things that are taking place on the device and then decide what they're going to take. They can also take control of it and do a lot of other scary things. Next, lateral movement. Of course, once a phisher is successful and they get in to your organization, if their goal is to breach, they're going to want to look around, see what else they can find, as we discussed, like on the devices. And we want to prevent that. So the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange definitely hides everything behind our proxy architecture and make sure that, I forgot to mention that right up front, that there is no scannable kind of attack surface available. And then once they get inside, everything is treated individually. So all of those applications, everything that your users or workloads or other applications may be accessing, instead of being a castle and moat where if you get in to the outside, from the outside, and you penetrate, you now have access, you have the keys to the kingdom. Now each individual thing is protected individually and it's all dark. All the applications are dark. Everything is unpublished. So I can't move from one application to another. I can't scan and go, around. Even with firewalls, once you're in like a safe zone, you can discover everything within that safe zone. That is not the case with Zero Trust architecture. It is Zero Trust across the board. So we can limit the blast radius of a potential incident. One description given is if you go to visit a headquarters, everything's going to be locked down. Hopefully you have to check in at the front desk. And if they just give you a visitor badge and let you roam, you can go into any open door along your way that you have access to. You could peek your head in there, you could grab something, you could go. In the Zero Trust Exchange example, you are basically blindfolded, escorted by an escort to the room that you're going to. You're put in that room without seeing anything else. There are no published door numbers. There are no other doors that you can see. Once you're done with that room, you are escorted back out. And both in the incoming and the external, your briefcase is searched to make sure, your backpack, whatever, that you didn't bring anything harmful in or take anything harmful or take anything valuable out. Any documents, papers, secrets that you weren't supposed to have. And we'll get to that in the fourth part with the stop data loss. And then shut down compromised users, of course, with inline inspection and detection, with these sophisticated, techniques, we can discover when the phishing attack is occurring, shut that down, and help, quarantine those compromised users immediately to reduce the blast radius further. And then finally, as I mentioned, stopping data loss, that inspecting all data in motion with that inline SSL, preventing, potential data theft. This becomes a big problem when you get to also later stage attacks like ransomware because of double extortion, where they're going to put the data on a leak site. And so then they're forcing victims to pay even if they can recover from backup. One thing that they may be looking for are like cyber insurance policies. So if I'm a phisher, I may come in, I may be trying to find your cyber insurance policy, and I'm going to sell it to my ransomware affiliate group that I know, because they are going to use that then to target that organization for a later ransomware attack. So that would be something that I would want to know was ever moving. If I ever saw my cyber insurance policy moving around or outside of the organization, I would be putting a stop to that. And I would also be raising a red flag and looking into who's doing this. But I would probably policy block it. Okay, next up. Poll question 6. How concerned are you about the business and threat implications of AI? I wanted to add another thing here to say like that I'm also excited because like I think I have concerns. I also have some excitement about what it could do for us on the business side, productivity, what it can do, in terms of defenders and how it's going to be used in tools in the future. Coming from a SOAR background, AI would be huge in terms of like helping to suggest the next move in a playbook or looking at, this is how I would build out this playbook for you, things like that. And then even furthermore, if it can do some of the coding work that integrates it. But of course, there's like tons of security concerns. And we're just right at this preface where we don't really know what's happening yet. But we know that AI is probably going to be used on both sides, especially by phishers. So I'm interested to see, this is just for my own knowledge and for, us to share what you guys think. Are you concerned about it? Are you like, no, it's great. AI is going to solve all our problems. Looks like so far about half people are concerned, very concerned. Some are somewhat concerned. And then some people are not very concerned. That's good. I mean, I think, like I said, there's going to be advantages and disadvantages. But for sure, these guys, the attackers on the other end, the threat actors, they're going to be using it. Okay. We can end that poll and keep going. Thank you. Let's talk about some of the predictions. So, of course, my first prediction for this next year is going to be, and this actually, I have a typo here. It should say 2023 and 2024 phishing predictions. So I apologize for that typo. Number one, the rise of AI attacks. For sure, the use of AI technologies and chatbots and things like that to launch more effective phishing attacks is going to be observed in the next year. It's already being observed, and we're going to continue to see it. You can create amazing phishing pages with AI. Of course, you can create perfect email templates. You can now do fast research with AI and say, hey, like, show me a list of companies that meets this criteria, right? A lot faster than you can do a Google search or something like of that effect. And a lot less biased than some of those lists that you can find, those pre-curated lists on the internet, because it's going to be searching for more. Now, there's limitations, of course, and we've already seen a lot of AIs, especially chatbots and stuff coming out that don't have the rules, like say ChatGPT, which is the most popular one that has a set of rules around it. The other ones don't have those type of rules. Those are already out there. I'm sure you guys are seeing the articles in the news every day about people saying like, we have to put a halt on this. We have to slow this down. We need to put regulations on it. People saying, I regret creating this. I regret being part of creating this. Like, because we don't know what's going to happen. And of course, it ranges from it's going to save us all and answer all our questions and diagnose our illnesses better than doctors to it's going to be the rise of AI and the end of our universe. So we're not sure where we sit, but with cybercrime, we should expect it. And that means, even more so, yes, you want to do user awareness training. Absolutely. Because still that spidey sense of like, why are they asking me for this? Why did my boss call me, hang up, and then like say switch to text? He would never do that. Those kind of things are important, but the actual detection, like it was before, is going to be so much harder because everything is going to look much more legitimate and realistic in terms of these attacks. But staying up on things, coming in webinars like this, reading reports like the Threat Labs report are going to keep you in the know about what's happening, what trends are shifting, so that you can continue to change your security strategy, especially around phishing. Next, phishing as a service will continue to evolve. These guys are still making a lot of money. It's still really effective. So we're going to see that continue to evolve. We're going to see the shape changing of what type of services they offer as AI fills gaps, certain gaps. The phishing as a service offerings will fill the gaps that AI still can't do for people. So you definitely will see that. And you'll see the customer service side of it, because that's the human element, like ramping up there as well. Mobile attacks will become more prevalent. So this is, everyone is living in this mobile world. We all have cell phones and devices, mobile devices. And so it's super lucrative, and it's still untapped in a way. They haven't nearly scratched the surface. So you're going to see a lot more phishing apps being developed. They're going to be populated right next to the legitimate apps in the, Apple Store, Google Play Store, things like that, things where you'd think that they're not going to be, they're going to be on there. And then, of course, MFA bombing, this is not going away, because as we've gotten really great at implementing MFA, these guys have got to figure out a way around it. So the MFA bombing and the adversary in the middle attacks, the browser and the browser attacks, all of those things, they can use different softwares. They can use public, Wi-Fi, of course. There's a ton of ways they can do it. They can use text message, social engineering, a lot of ways to get somebody to give over their MFA code, password, or to approve that request. And they're right there in the middle, and they're actually accessing the legitimate thing. And then that person maybe thinks, oh, this is an actual real request. Like, I'm getting back my bank account information and this and that. So like, I actually did this and accessed this, when really that's all just being streamed to them, or told to them in the case of social engineering. And what's really happening is that attacker's in there emptying out that bank account. And then finally, personalized attacks, especially AI is going to help with this more, with personalizing those attacks. And personalized attacks just work really well. So it's worth it, especially if the research is easier to do, to make those attacks more personal. So again, looking up on LinkedIn, who is like Emily's manager, and can we impersonate him? And no, chances are you probably can't, but we'll see. So if you're a fisher out there, maybe you could try. I'll let you guys know if anything happens. But personalized attacks are going to become really challenging to detect. And that is something that you need to put into that security awareness training, and you need to expect. Is it like, your manager should not be contacting you via text and then asking you to transfer funds. The end. But that's just one broad example. There's going to be a lot more. If you want to learn more about all this, download the phishing report, because this was a quick summary of this larger report where we go into detail on all of this, including all the different prevention measures and the way that the Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange links to those things. I think there might be some questions. If you have questions, please stick them in the Q&A right now. There's a little delay. Specifically, I wanted to talk, while we're here, and we have a couple more minutes while you guys are sending in your questions, about some of the things, more best practices that you can do. One of the things in the phishing report is there's the best practices on security control section. I'm going to hit the highlights here for you. It talks about email scanning, reporting, multi-factor authentication, encrypted traffic inspection, antivirus software, advanced threat protection, URL filtering, regular patching, zero trust architecture, and threat intel feeds. We also have best practices on how to identify a phishing page. I have appendices with all the top latest phishing scam types, and more information on that. I think there's like 20 something of them. So there's an in-depth of like how to identify a phishing page, which is really cool. You should definitely be sharing that with your security folks and anyone on your team. It should be incorporated into the user awareness training as well, if possible. And then in terms of the Zero Trust Exchange, we talked about how it prevents that initial compromise, how it eliminates the lateral movement across your environment. It shuts down compromised users and insider threats, and it stops data loss. If you don't have the zero trust architecture or something similar, a zero trust framework in place at the architecture level, then you're not going to be future proofing against the new types of attacks that are coming for you. This is the foundation that you need, where you're going to layer all of your other approaches on top of it. This is the thing where we need to expect that these guys are going to get in at some point, because as we know from pen testers, if they really want to get in, they're going to find a way. They're going to use social engineering. They're going to use outside tactics that just catch users by surprise that use affiliate networks for actual legitimate businesses like supply chain vendors, software vendors, things like that, downstream, upstream attacks, every which way and sideways. And so they're going to get in. You need to prepare not only to stop them, but also to stop the blast radius once they do get in, prevent them from getting anything valuable in there and shut it down so that you can continue to answer, no, I haven't had a big phishing impact in the last year. Related Zscaler products that I want to talk about. We have Zscaler Internet Access, which helps identify and stop malicious activity by routing and inspecting all internet traffic through the Zero Trust Exchange. So, and that's where I was also talking about that full SSL inspection. You need to have that on. So URLs and IPs observed in the Zscaler cloud and from natively integrated open source and commercial threat intel sources. So it includes policy-defined, high-risk URL categories commonly used for phishing, such as newly observed and newly activated domains. So these are any newly observed or activated domains in the last 10 days. These are usually going to be policy blocked or at least warned or browser isolated, however you want to set that up. And that's super easy. I think by default, it's best to just block them. But browser isolation is a really nice option so that the users can see them, but they can't cause any damage. Of course, advanced threat protection blocks all, known command and control domains. We have the advanced firewall that extends that protection to all ports and protocols, including emerging command and control destinations. I already talked about browser isolation. We have the advanced cloud sandbox, which prevents unknown malware delivered in second stage payloads. It's going to detonate that automatically and be like, nope, blocked. And then the private access, which safeguards applications, limits lateral movement, least privileged access, user to app segmentation, full inline inspection of private app traffic, and Zscaler deception. You should be deploying decoys all on your environment so that when they get in, they hit those decoys. It's like ringing the doorbell, ding dong, I'm here, I'm in your environment, I'm a hacker, come get me. And then you can just quickly shut them down because nobody should be hitting those decoys. Those look like high value targets, but they are not. Deception technology is super cool. And pen testers say that it is one of the few things that can stop them when they get in because it looks exactly like the real thing. So if you haven't checked out deception technology, check out Zscaler Deception. It is also going to be linked in the report if you want to find out more. So for your next steps, download the report and then also check out our Zscaler security risk assessment to see where your gaps are. Any questions coming in yet? All right. Looks like we have a few. Let me see if I can pull these up. Okay. What type of phishing attacks are top of mind for you right now? Job scams are top of mind for me right now. We're seeing tons and tons of job scams with tech layoffs and the down economy. We're seeing people hit LinkedIn and they're scraping legitimate job postings off Zscaler, off other companies and saying, hey, come apply for us. And then they're saying, we're going to help you. And at some point, there's an exchange of money taking place or credentials or something of that nature. And they'll say things like, we just need, are you CISSP certified or something? Okay, great. You need to prove that, but you need to do it automatically. So you got to pay in $50 and we'll pull it for you and send it over or something like weird like that, where they're trying to say, if you're in the process of this thing or you have this thing, but you don't have like the exact documentation for it, you pay us and we help you, or we're going to help you expedite this. And you just have to pay us $130. We're basically like your private headhunter. So we're seeing tons and tons and tons of job scams. So be aware of those. Make sure to look for job scams and regarding your own company. And then also, if you are looking at any jobs, be aware that those are out there. Next, why are people still falling for phishing scams? Isn't it old news? As I said, phishing scams aren't going away anytime soon. They're getting more and more sophisticated and harder to detect, and they're still so lucrative. So that is why they're not going to go away anytime soon. They're just low risk for cyber criminals. So expect those to keep rising. Next, will a zero trust strategy alone be enough against phishing attacks? The answer is no, it won't. But it is that necessary foundation that you need. So make sure that, on your roadmap, if you're not already using a zero trust architecture foundation, if you don't already have that approach baked into everything that you're doing. And I mean, fully, holistically. Nothing is trusted. No network segmentation, no user, no application, nothing. There are no watering holes where you can come and get whatever you want. Then you need to be looking at your strategy again and trying to come up with ways that you can work that in as soon as possible, because it's not just phishing, it's every type of cyber attack. And it is really going to be the thing that future proofs your organization against whatever is coming and whatever AI has to deliver for us. Every new day is another opportunity for cyber attackers to compromise users, to send out phishing emails, to deliver malware, to get in. You have to deal with this every single day forever. So make sure the strategy you're building is super comprehensive and expects them to get in, and what to do about it then. But of course, tries to block them as much as possible and keep them out. That strong foundation, that zero trust architecture foundation, and the policies that go with it, along with like really strong MFA practices, great security awareness training, dedicated anti-phishing email solutions, and leveraging lots and lots of threat intelligence, like webinars that you like, things that you're learning in this report and this webinar, are going to help you stay in front of the latest known threats. So please keep coming back for more, and check out that report. That's all I have, Cody.
Well, perfect. We are at the top of the hour. So, Emily, thank you so much for joining me today on Techstrong Learning. I know I'm walking away from this with a whole bunch, and I'm sure every one of our attendees is as well. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, to our attendees, I'd like to remind everyone that this session was recorded. So, should you want to rewatch this, you will be receiving an email with a link to access the recording on demand. Of course, it will also be living on the Security Boulevard website at securityboulevard.com/webinars, and just be sure to look in the on-demand section. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing are Toby M., Guillermo B., Wilson B., and Paul B. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your email inbox to claim your gift card. You should receive it in about 48 hours. If you don't happen to see that email, check your spam folder just in case it gets filtered out. I'd like to thank Zscaler for sponsoring our program today. And to everyone who is still with me hearing my voice, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time, and we want to hear your feedback. So as soon as we close out, there will be a survey that pops up. Let us know what you thought about this program, or if you have suggestions for a future program. Either way, we do hope to see everyone at an upcoming Techstrong Learning experience. Have a great rest of your day. And Emily, thank you again so much.
Thank you.